Hello and welcome to Creator Toolbox on this Tuesday.
April 20th.
420.
April 20th. That's of
420.
course. So let's go ahead and get started with introductions. Andrew.
Hello, everybody. I'm Andrew Barnes, developer advocate here at ServiceNow. I have been developing on the platform for about 7 years, and one of my specialties is really relevant to today, which is managing development and deployments for ServiceNow. So that is going to come in handy today.
All right.
And my name is Chuck Tomasi, senior developer advocate at ServiceNow. Been here for, since 2010. Building all kinds of applications and videos and blogs and bringing them to you to share the excitement, to share the education. Customer for a couple of years before that, and have, it's almost 40 years of experience in this industry.
All right. Thanks, Chuck. My name is Brad Tilton. I am a developer advocate with the developer program here at ServiceNow. I've been developing on the platform for a little over a decade, and excited about today's show. Before we get into it, we have any announcements we want to make?
I do have one quick one. The America's Certified Master Architect program is taking applicants until, the 27th? I think it's just another week after we broadcast this. Go to devlink.sn/CMA. If you like, we can put the link in the YouTube chat as well. But devlink.sn/CMA. It is a paid-for certification. It is quite the time commitment, but you can read all about it on that page if you'd like to engage with someone who's been through it before, either in EMEA, AMS, or APJ. We can connect you with somebody on that, and you can ask more about that. So very elite, very difficult. I'm not going to couch this. It is a challenging program. Not everyone who applies passes. So there you go.
The other thing is Knowledge is coming up next month. So head over to knowledge.servicenow.com. And as of today, so prior to today, you could register and you could favorite things, but you couldn't really add them to your list. So today you can go add them to your list. So even if you've previously favorited them, you'll want to go and interact with those records again and add them to your list. So that will be for the on-demand sessions are available right now. And I believe all of the scheduled ones are available or soon to be available there as well.
All right. And then we also have a hackathon coming up, CreatorCon Hackathon, that's going to be happening on May 8th. I know that.
Absolutely.
It's not today's.
And so for the hackathon, you'll go to the same place, knowledge.servicenow.com, search for hackathon and find the hackathon session and join that. And then you will get some notifications about how to create your team shortly thereafter. So it should be, it'll either be immediate if you're watching this in the future, or it might be a day if you're watching this live today.
All right. Well, without further ado, Andrew, why don't you tell us what we're going to be doing today?
Yeah, so we're going to do a two-parter today. So this is part one of managing your development pipelines, and part two will be next week. So today we're going to talk about the slightly older method, which is update sets, and I'll get into more of that in just a second. And then next week, we're going to talk about source control and the application repo. And so what I'd like to do with this is talk about the maturity model of how to go from wherever you're at today to a more mature development pipeline setup. So we're going to look at update sets today because that's what primarily most of you are still using. And there's definitely maturity that can be done in the update set space for you. And then next week, we're going to look at the application repo and source control and how to move past update sets and start using those to get even more automation and consistency and fast delivery in your development deployment. Because I think developers should spend time developing and not time managing the release of their development work.
No value in all that.
So wherever I have worked on updating our development pipeline to minimize the amount of time that developers have to spend on that, because I prefer them working on stories than managing getting their stories into production. And so do either of you have any questions about that before we start the screen share?
Just a quick update for if anybody's just watching or new to the platform. An update set really just records those changes you're making to the configurable objects in the system. So a business rule, an ACL, pieces of your application or an existing application that you want to configure, modify, create, perhaps. You want to make a new business rule or a new role. You can add those. Those are recorded. Almost think of it as this stenographer off to the side going, oh yeah, we got a new business rule. It's collected into this bundle called an update set that you can then move to your other instances or share with your friends if that's what you do. And it doesn't record what I'll call transactional data, a user that's added to the system, an incident that's created. So certain tables are watched for those recordable changes. And we're going to show you how you can manage those and move those from one instance to another. This has been around since 2005, 2006. I didn't get the exact date when I talked to David Liu the other day, but they are a very old school feature. They're not going away in light of the newer methods that we'll cover on the next episode. But just for a little background, if anybody hasn't really been made aware of what an update set is.
Awesome. Thanks, Chuck. Anything from you, Brad?
No, I'm ready
All
to
right.
get into it.
I will start my screen share then.
All right.
So the first place I thought I'd land us, and we'll come back to these, is I've written several blogs on update sets and managing development pipelines. So over at developer.servicenow.com, you can find the blog. And if you search update set, you will get the tag that will get you to these two blogs that we'll look at today. So there's update set development management, and then there's managing update sets. We're going to look at both of these at different points today. So with that, let us, and here's how I actually pulled them up myself. I went to developer site, I did a search for update set, and that's how I found them. So that is how I will find them as well as you can. So as a developer, it doesn't matter, which application you're using to manage your stories, or even if you're calling them stories. That doesn't matter. I'm going to use the ServiceNow story table today, but none of this is specific to the ServiceNow story table. It's just the examples of buckets of work that I'm going to do. So I'm going to use ServiceNow tables, but if you're using any other product, it doesn't even have to be an application. It could be an Excel file. It doesn't matter. The principles are still going to hold. You've got some, requests for development, and they're going to be grouped together in larger bundles. And then you have releases, which is the actual deployment. And so we'll walk through that. So let us open one of these stories. And these are all just fake stub stories, which is fine. Real? These aren't real. I'm not going to build a laser today. I love lasers. I built lasers, but we're not going to create any lasers in ServiceNow today. So when I have a story in ServiceNow, I do a one-to-one relationship at minimum between my story and an update set. So right off the bat, I'm going to go with a naming convention. So I am going to go create an update set for this story. And
so you're doing one per story?
Yeah, I do at least one per story.
Okay.
And we'll talk about why in a second. So I've got my naming convention, which is my story number and then short description. You should have some form of naming convention for your story, for your update sets. This is just an example one. So follow whatever your org has, but there should be one, and it should be in some form relatable back to the story record that you're working on.
Andrew, can you enlarge the font a bit?
Absolutely.
Bueno.
So when I submit and make current, that now sets my update set that I'm working in to be that update set. And that is what I want. So I'm going to refresh this window so that UI 16 tells me the right stuff at the top. So now I'm going to go create a business rule. So right this moment in that story record, we will see this customer update table. So this related list is that stenographer that Chuck was talking about. So down here is where we're going to see the entries for the work product that I do. So if I go create a business rule, and I'm going to do this directly in the platform view, I could do this in Studio just as easily. They'll still get stored in my update sets. So it doesn't matter how you're generating these records. They will still get stored in that update set table in that related list. So we're going to create the laser party, and we're going to create this on problem because lasers are a problem. Problem table, and well, let's make it advanced because we like advanced, and insert and set a couple of conditions like the state is assess, and the short description, no, the description contains lasers. All right. So when I hit submit, that's going to create this business rule application record. And application records are, and business rules specifically, are one of the watched tables that Chuck was talking about earlier when he was talking about what is stored in update sets. So my expectation now is if I refresh this related list, I will get an entry here. And I do. And it tells me that it's a business rule for, and gives me the details of this. And if you open this up, you'll actually see inside of here, this payload field contains that whole record that you just generated. So all of this payload is the same thing is on this business rule that I just created. If I exported this as an XML, did I not click it? Come on, you can do it. If I exported this as XML or just viewed the XML, which is similar, this is the same thing that's stored in that payload. So all of the details of that application file are here, and it has to be because this is what actually moves between your ServiceNow instances. So I think that's enough about the bare basics of update sets. So let's talk about managing them a bit. So in my update sets, as I said, I like my stories to have at least one update set related to them. And I've even, done some nice automation with that. But for today, we're going to talk about the process, and processes can be automated, but they can also be manual. So we're going to go through them manually, but just note that you could automate some or all of these things today. So what did I mean by just, maybe one story, or there could be multiple? What happens then? So for that, I'm going to return to my story table, and I'm going to pull up Cake.
I like your apps.
And Cake has got some Scrum tasks, and they're going to be assigned to different developers. And so they're going to be working in their development in separate update sets. So one of the developers is going to do the shopping, and one of them is going to do the mixing. So update, so local update sets. Let's get the story number. And we're going to make a new update set for our news story about cake. We're going to save this. And then we're going to make a new one for, so dev. So I've got one to my story, and Chuck is going to go do the shopping. So Chuck is going to do our shopping for this. And we might even take, this is again, just an example, but we might take the task, and that might be our naming convention if we have Scrum tasks. It's probably a little redundant. I'd probably just use the Scrum task numbering, but for this purpose, we're going to be happy with that. And then I'm going to create one more for Brad, who's going to do our mixing.
I got both my shots. I can go out now and go shopping.
So Brad is going to do our mixing. And now we have 3 update sets for this story. And do we want to, this is going to be a rhetorical question, but it's fine. Do we want to actually, have to, export all 3 of those update sets and interact with them separately when we're in our release process and moving it up to
no,
our
because you might get them in the wrong order. Yeah, there's all kinds of room for human error there. The one thing you do need to pay attention to is when I'm doing work on that one update set, I have to go and select that as my update set. I got to make sure that I am using it's recording to the right page in the notebook, so to speak.
Absolutely. So I've narrowed down my update set table to just the ones that start with my story. So you see how this pattern is helping me with my problem right here already. These are all interrelated. And we have this thing called batching. And batching is a way to group, relate update sets together, and then be able to act on them together. And the way it works is very simple. It's the parent field. So if you're familiar with the parent field from other, record interactions in ServiceNow, update sets have the parent field as well, and they create a hierarchy. And so our story one is going to be our parent for the other 2. So we're going to set that. We're going to set that. There we go. So what that's now done is made the parent, this story is now a batch. So if I open up this record, it'll actually give me a little bit of different interface down here at the bottom. You can now see update sets in this batch. So it now knows that it's a batch and shows these related lists of the update sets in the batch. And you'll note there's 3 here because it actually counts itself is inside the batch, which it is. It is part of the batch. And the children are here. And one of you could potentially ask me this question, but I'm going to answer it anyway. Can I batch batches? And the answer is yes, and we're going to show that. So you can have a whole hierarchy of these batches. And I've got some images for that here.
Look at that.
So our story, is that batch that we just created, and it has those Scrum task update sets in it. And our release is another update set that all of the story batches point to. And you can also insert another layer in there for epics. So if I return back to my instance and look at my stories and remove this filter, and I have to go to the story table to look at my stories, you'll see that I have an epic. So my epic will have stories in it, and each of these stories will have an update set, or there'll be a batch. So they'll have at least one update set. And then my epic, this one, this laser powers, will also have an update set, and it will be the parent of all of those story ones. And then our release, again, will be one update set that's a batch. So all of the epics and stories update sets that don't currently have a parent will be set to the release update set as its parent. And with that, I can craft that single batch for a release. So let's walk through what that looks like in practice. So we've got 3 update sets right now, right? Or did we make 4? I think we made 4.
Are they all still in
made
progress,
4.
or did we complete them?
They're all still in progress.
Okay.
So we're going to pretend like there's stuff in all of them. So let's return to our update set table.
Really? I went shopping.
Really, you did. I believe you.
You gave me money?
So let us sort by created. All right. So we've got our 4 update sets. So one of them is for a story that's got so this is a batch. This one's just one update set. Let's us create a release update set. So I'm going to open up that release record and get its number. So you see how that pattern helps me. Having that established pattern is going to make life easy for me soon. So this is going to be for the Live Code Happy Hour release, which is a little redundant name, calling a release, but it's fine. So I'm going to submit that. And now when we refresh our update sets, I updated it. That was so bad of me. I got to make a new update set now. You didn't catch that. Somebody should have caught me being bad.
Sorry.
That's fine. So which one did I overwrite?
First one.
The first one? Let's put it back. So new one for lasers. Submit. And now we've returned to our update set table. And let us filter. Yeah, there we go. Give me a nice filter. So these are all of the update sets that I've created for this release. And I'm going to apply the same logic that I did for the Scrum tasks for the story to the release, which is I'm going to look at my update set table. I'm going to find all of the ones for my release. And there are some tricks to doing this well. You can get to the part where you actually relate the records, and then you could do a query that way. For today, I might do something like open up my release and see all the stories in there and get the story numbers, and then use that as a query for my update set table. Since I used a naming convention, that is something that could help me, right? So all of the stories in my release, I could do a query for the update sets that have those story numbers and narrow the list down to this. So we're going to pretend like we just did that. So we've narrowed it down to all of the ones in our release. And now we're going to look at all of the ones that don't have a parent. So these are all of the top level ones, whether they're a batch or not. And I'm going to set the parent of those to my release.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have a batch for my release. Typically, where you're going to build this release is in not your dev instance. It's going to be in your test instance. So I didn't do that this time, but I totally could have. And in fact, I'm going to, because let's do that.
So the
Why is
practice
that?
would be
Unset that.
to move your individual stories to test and test them. And then when you're happy with what stories are actually going to be released, then you batch those into a release and promote that to prod.
Yes.
Is that what I heard?
Yes, you did. So
Okay.
I'm going to, as a developer, when my story is ready for testing, in my typical setup, that means it's time for me to get it peer reviewed. And for me, the way that I've designed it previously is during the peer review process, the other developer will move it to the test instance. So
Okay.
they peer review it. When they, so they inspect my update sets, they check to see that things look right, and then they promote that update set or batch, whether, so if it's a batch, they'll promote the batch. If it's a single update set, they'll promote that. And then deploy that to the test instance. And then we'll go through our release management testing process on that test instance for everything that should be going into our next release. And the ones that do get approved to go into our release, we batch those together. And then we'll move them to our next instance. So let's do that. So we've got these 3 things that are dev complete. And now I will go to my test instance and retrieve them. So I'll go to retrieved update sets. I'll go to update sources. And I'll say retrieve completed update sets.
So just to back up a little bit, the update source was defined once on each instance to say, where am I getting this from? Do you recommend prod gets from test, or prod source is dev?
So prod source should be wherever you're building, so one step down from prod in your development pipeline. It should not be dev. So
Too
it
risky.
might be, you might have dev test QA prod, or you might have dev test prod. And so, prod should retrieve from whichever one is right before it in the pipeline. So I've retrieved my completed update sets. So you'll see slightly different wording for the batch one, right? So this is previewed in a batch. So actually, I only have to open these 2 because these other ones are part of the cake batch. So I will commit lasers.
The preview, by the way, when you do an import from an update source, the preview is automatic.
Yes, it is.
It's not automatic if you do a retrieved update set, like you import an XML file that your friend gave you or you downloaded from Share. Put that in, you still need to preview it and recognize if there are any errors, you need to resolve them.
So one other thing about batching that's great, and I didn't show it here, but I could have, is you can have multiple scopes in the same batch. That's not a problem. So my top level one could be global, and then one of them could be, security incident response, and the other one could be HR. It shouldn't be those 3 probably should not be in the same story, but they can be in the same batch. So
we have a
I'll
question
commit.
in the chat.
Ooh, I love questions.
What if you're not using the update source and you're moving them locally? Can we move batched update sets by exporting to XML?
Absolutely, you can. So when you view that record in your development instance, so we will return to our development instance and open up the batch, which is the cake one. You'll see the UI action is slightly different for a batch, which it'll say export update set batch to XML. So that will bundle up all of the things in this batch into a single export XML record.
Nice.
Not sure I'd
So,
recommend that on a day-to-day basis for operations.
oh no, I mean, it is much easier to just use the retrieve update set from the update sources action. But it is definitely possible to
Yep.
move batches. So I committed that batch, which deployed both this update set and its children. And so now one of my testers, has done some testing, and they've said, oh, story, 10,005 for cake has an issue. What do I do?
Promote it to prod. It's how we keep our paycheck coming.
So what we do is we return back to our dev instance and we make a new update set. So we're going to call this one a new update set. And we're going to say this is fix, for XYZ. And I'm going to submit and make current. And I'm going to go to my business rule. And I'm going to update my condition to say, or contains cake. So I've updated my business rule to fix the issue. And now I have an update set in dev. Right here, fix for issue. And so I've completed this, and now I'll go through that peer review process again. And so for me, another developer would come in here and preview this and check to make sure that I have done the appropriate thing in this business rule. And we will complete this record. And then we'll retrieve it in to our test instance. So I'll return to that update sources table. And I will open it up and I will say retrieve completed update sets. And that could have just as easily been a batch. And so we've got our previewed fix right here. And I'm going to commit this update set because I have no collisions. And here's where the magic comes in. Does someone know out there in the comments land what I should do now? So I have fixed an issue for story 10,005 in dev and moved it to test. And test also has some other update sets related to story 10,005.
Batch them all.
Batch them all is what we shall do, Chuck. That is what we shall do. So
because
I'm
just
going
in this,
to go.
In this scenario, you only modified one business rule, but that first update set may have 16 things, and the next one was only one little patch for that. So if you didn't include the one with the bug, you'd be missing 15 other useful things.
Correct. That one fix is not inclusive of all of the work for story 10,005. So it just had that one fix for that one business rule. And as you said, Chuck, there could be tons of other stuff in these other update sets because it is not holistic for all changes. It's just the changes you made in that one update set. And so I'm in my test instance now, and I need to put story 10,005 fix for XYZ into my batch for story 10,005. So I will go to the local update set table in test, and I will find that update set that I just committed, and I will set its parent to be story 10,005 cake. And so I want to make it consistent with these friends, right? So here is our batch base, and these are the ones that came over initially, and now this one is here in test as well. So now I have a batch in test of 4 stories. And now we'll do our release. We did it in dev, but now we're going to do it in the correct spot, which is here in our test instance. So we're going to make our release batch. There's going to be nothing in this batch right now in this update set because we haven't done anything yet. And I'll do a similar property that I did before, is I'll do a search on the local update sets in test that match, that should be inside of my release. And then I'm going to only show the ones that don't have a parent. Because if they have a parent field, that means they're in a batch and they're already going to be grouped up for me. So I've narrowed it down to just the 2 top level objects that need to be put into my release. And now in my test instance, I have built my release and it's still in progress. And that's okay because I'm still might have another story that another dev is working on. So I believe I had Candy that Brad's being a little slow on, and he hasn't yet finished his story, but he's going to make it before our release deadline. And when he does, we will add his batch for the Candy release, or the Candy story, into our release in test. And then when this is ready, so when we're actually like solidifying what's in the release, and we're going to lock it down so that we can do our testing in our QA instance, we'll set this to complete. This is going to prompt us to say, hey, this will close any in progress update sets in our batch, which is no problem because there aren't any open ones because we're in our test instance and we don't edit our update sets in our test instance. So once I hit save, now this batch, this release batch, is ready to be pulled into my QA instance and run any of my testing there. And if those pass, I can then pull that batch into my production instance and preview it prior to my change window. Now, why would I preview that in production prior to my change window? Any takers?
I mean, so you can see if there's any errors in the preview before you have to commit it.
Absolutely. That is a star for Brad today on that one is if I preview it before my change window, then I can, now it's probably, I'm previewing it during regular business hours, and I can get any developers that had any work related to that conflict that might have arisen to help me remediate that. Whereas if I wait until my change window, either all of my dev team needs to be available during my change window, which boo, I don't want that. Or I'll have to, work harder to figure out that remediation during my change window, and that will raise my anxiety. Whereas if instead during my change window, what I have is this release batch just sitting in production, previewed and ready, and all I have to do is hit that commit button, that makes my release process much happier on my tummy. It won't make it upset and raise my anxiety. So with that is the main thing I wanted to show today about how to batch and how to build that relationship between stories, epics, and releases to your update sets. But I've got one bonus. Does somebody want a bonus?
Sure. That's why we watch these videos. It's for the bonus material.
Let's do one bonus. So it is coming up on clone day. And I need to clone production down to my subprods. What do I do? How does batching help me with this? And the answer is, we will repeat a very similar process to what you just saw for building a release, but for cloning. So let's return to our dev instance. into our update set table. And we're going to look in our dev instance. So this is my dev instance. This is my clone target. And any of my in progress work that's here, I want to make sure I save that before the clone, right? Does that make sense? Because I don't want to lose any of that work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new update set in my dev instance that's going to say clone in progress, and then give it a date like April 20. And so I'm going to submit that, and I'm going to filter my update set list to be in progress ones that have no parent, that are not the default set. And I'm going to then batch all of these into that in progress update set for the clone. And this is going to throw me some errors because those are different source. Those are different scopes. So it's not going to let me do that easily. I'm going to have to switch my scopes to do this. But we'll do the global ones to show you what I mean. In fact, we'll just do a couple. We'll do this one to say clone. And then we will do this one and say clone. And then I'll go switch my to, what was that, book now? Yeah. And now we'll be able to do book now. Clone.
So you can mix and match different scopes within a batch.
Absolutely. And once I have done this for all of these, so I'll switch my scope and I'll set these for all of them. Now I will have a batch for my clone, which contains all of the in progress update sets. And so I will complete this batch, and I can either promote this to prod and not deploy it prior to the backup for the clone, or I can export to XML.
Mm-hmm.
And then after my clone, I will either, it will already be there because I imported it to prod without deploying it, or I will bring it in from a file and preview and commit it. So let's actually do that. Let's walk through that process. So let us switch our scope to global. And then this will be happy. And we'll say, complete this. Yes, I really did mean complete it. I'm going to export it. Then I'm going to perform my clone. And then I'm going to import it back. So pretend this is my dev instance. It's not, but pretend this is my dev instance. After the clone, I'm going to import these back. So I should have clone in progress, April 20. And we should go to the global scope. So this is previewed or not previewed. This is exactly what Chuck said. If you do it with the retrieve method, it will auto preview. And if you bring it in from a file, it will not. So I had to preview this. And then I have to remediate the issues. Okay. So let's skip the remote update. And then we will commit this update set batch. And then the last step that I need to do is disassociate these from this batch and open them back up. So in my local update sets that were just generated, I can filter to batch base. I can remove their parent. And I'm sorry, you don't filter on batch base. It works in this case. What you need to do instead is parent. So ignore what I said about batch base. You want the parent field to be clone, and then we're going to remove that. And we're going to set these back to in progress. Now, you don't have to do this in progress part. That's up to you and your practice. But what you'll want to do is make these your parent for any more work on these either way. So I'm okay setting these to in progress. It's about the only time that I'm okay switching a local update set from completed to in progress is part of this clone process. So now my developer who's working on this build tracker record that was in progress right before the clone is now back in my dev instance in progress right after the clone. And that, with that, I will stop the share and then see if we have any further questions once I can find how to stop the share. There we are. And now we're back.
We do have a couple of questions. It seems like there's maybe still a little bit of confusion around how batching handles, updating the same record in different update sets in the batch compared to merging update sets, where we know that when you merge them, you just get the newest one.
Yep. So the way it works in batching is a similar process. It will, apply the newest one. But the benefit over batching, over merging in that case, is you actually still have the hierarchy of the update sets and the individual entries. And that allows you the ability to back out different parts of your release. So if you think of your release as that tree of those update sets, so this is a batch that releases a single batch, and then there's multiple update sets, which themselves might be batches underneath it. You can back out any one of those. But if instead you did that merge process to create that new update set, you get all or nothing. If you want to back that out, you have to back out the whole release, which is why you don't tend to use back out if you're using merge, because you'd have to reverse everything. Whereas with updates at batching, you can back out just one leaf or one branch or the whole thing.
That's handy. That's handy. Andrew, any insights on how fixed scripts are handled and run in this process?
As related to update set deployment?
Yeah. Are they run, when it comes to batching, does it go through the whole hierarchy and run each fixed script at the end? Does it run it as each leaf is completed?
So my understanding is a couple of releases ago, they stopped fixed scripts from running automatically when deployed.
So it's up to the administrator to,
or not.
You got to run those fixed scripts manually after you've made your deployment. Okay.
That's my understanding, and I don't believe it matters how you're deploying, whether it's from the application repo, source control, update sets, or batches.
Okay, we can test it real fast.
We can test that. But I've got a little note in my brain that sort of says fixed scripts don't work quite the same way, and I believe that means they don't automatically run anymore. Any other questions you saw from the chat, Brad?
There's a question, is merging going to get deprecated? I don't know, batching has been around for quite a while now and merging is still there. So I don't really expect it to get deprecated, but you never know.
Yeah, we don't have an expectation that it will be, but batching to me is handles everything that merging does and has other features. So I don't do any merging anymore because there's just not a good benefit to merging because you can treat a batch as a single update set roughly, except for when it's better than a single update set.
You hit a good topic here, Andrew. We got a lot of discussion going on. There was a point about, can you filter when you say retrieve completed update sets? Can you filter what's coming at that instance? Because it may not be, I really want those 6 that were in the batch, but I'm given 200. Any thoughts on that?
So you can't filter that list. It will go retrieve any of the ones that it hasn't retrieved before. So there is no filtering that's applied. You can filter your list, after it's retrieved. The only other way to do filtering is in the source instance. So the one that they are retrieving from, any of the ones that are not completed won't get retrieved, and that could be in progress or ignore. So
ignored is a good one. Yeah, I like that. Ignored. I have seen. Yep.
So post clone from production to dev, one thing that is beneficial to do is to set all of the completed ones from production to ignore. Either you can do that in production prior to cloning, or if you don't want to do it that way, you can do it in the dev instance post to clone. I prefer to do it in production. So I set all of my update sets in production to ignore after I have released them. Because then after a clone, the only things that will be retrieved from my test instance, from my dev instance, will be that new update sets that I've created.
Yep. There's also another property that I had a hard time remembering, but Mark put it in the chat, that says, don't retrieve update sets completed if they're older than so many days. So if you don't want things, there's customers that have been doing this for 15 years now. Imagine how many update sets they've got. And you could say, look, I really don't want, I'm not interested in anything older than 30 days or 90 days or 180 days. Totally up to you what you set that property to.
There's a property for that?
There is a property for that.
I wasn't aware of that property, probably because I set all of them to ignore, and it wouldn't. I don't need to narrow it down. It's because they're already ignored, and so it doesn't retrieve them because they're ignored already. That's cool. I was not unaware of that feature. Thanks, Mark and Chuck, for sharing that.
I didn't know either.
It's hilarious how, your decisions can make it so that you don't even know a different way to solve it, because you don't run into that, because you don't get a long list because you've set it up in a way that you wouldn't get a long list anyway.
I think I picked that up on an internal TOI a few years ago. It's only been around for 3 years or so, but like it's one of those nuggets that you stick away in the back and go, I don't use it today, but.
Awesome.
All right.
Well,
thank
you so much.
Yeah, thanks for demoing today. Again, Drew had a comment in the chat that he wants to go away from update sets, and next week is your week, Drew. We're going to look at managing dev part 2, but this time with source control and the app repo. So thanks a lot, Andrew, for demoing.
Perfect segue to end on, Drew. Thank you, Andrew.
It is. Thank you.
All right. Anything else before we leave?
Just the music.
All right. All right. Well, thanks, everybody.